The scream tore through the afternoon air just as Logan Anderson dismounted his horse at the edge of the Truckee River. And without thinking, his boots were already moving toward the sound before his mind caught up with his body. It was June of 1878, and the snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada had turned the normally placid Truckee River into a churning beast. Logan had been riding the fence line of the cattle ranch where he worked, checking for breaks after the spring floods, when he heard that desperate cry. His eyes scanned the water, catching sight of a flash of dark blue fabric being pulled downstream at a terrifying speed. There, a woman, her arms flailing as the current dragged her under, then pushed her back up gasping. She was maybe 30 yards out from the bank, and the river was carrying her straight toward the rocky rapids another 100 yards downstream. Logan did not hesitate. He kicked off his boots, tossed his hat aside, and plunged into the icy water. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath, but he pushed forward with strong strokes. The current grabbed at him immediately, trying to pull him under just as it had her. He was a strong swimmer, had been since childhood when his father taught him in the gentler streams back in Missouri, but this was different. This water had teeth. "Hold on," he shouted, though he knew she probably could not hear him over the roar of the river. Her head went under again, and Logan's heart seized. He swam harder, angling himself to intercept her path. His fingers brushed fabric, lost it, then caught hold of her dress. He pulled her toward him, wrapping one arm around her waist as she coughed and sputtered, her fingernails digging into his forearm with the desperation of someone facing death. "I have got you," he said against her ear, holding her tight to his chest. "I will not let go." The current was relentless, pulling them both toward the rapids. Logan knew they had seconds to get to shore or they would both be smashed against the rocks. He kicked hard, using the current rather than fighting it, angling them toward the bank. His free arm cut through the water in powerful strokes, every muscle in his body straining against the river's pull. The woman in his arms had gone limp, whether from exhaustion or unconsciousness he could not tell, but her dead weight made swimming nearly impossible. His lungs burned, his arms screamed, but he refused to let go. He would drown before he released her. His foot hit something solid, a submerged rock. Logan used it to push off, propelling them closer to the bank. Another few strokes and his hand caught a low-hanging willow branch. He gripped it so hard the bark cut into his palm, but he held fast, pulling them both toward the muddy shore. With the last of his strength, Logan dragged them onto the bank, collapsing onto his back with the woman still clutched against his chest. They lay there gasping, coughing up river water, their bodies shaking from cold and adrenaline. After a moment, Logan rolled to his side, gently turning the woman onto her back. Her eyes were closed, her face pale beneath the water dripping from her dark hair. She was young, perhaps 20 or 21, with delicate features and full lips that had taken on a blue tinge. "Miss," Logan said, his voice rough. "Miss, can you hear me?" she coughed, water spilling from her mouth and her eyes fluttered open. They were the color of spring violets, he noticed absurdly, given the circumstances. She stared at him for a moment, confused, before recognition of what had just happened seemed to flood back. Her eyes widened and she tried to sit up, only to collapse back with a groan. "Easy now," Logan said, supporting her shoulders. "You nearly drowned, just breathe." "My sister," she gasped out, grabbing the front of his soaked shirt. "Harriet, where is Harriet?" Logan's blood ran cold. "There was someone else in the water." "No, no." The woman shook her head, then winced as if the motion pained her. "She was on the bank. We were gathering blackberries. I reached too far and the bank gave way. She was screaming my name." As if summoned by her words, Logan heard the sound of someone crashing through the brush behind them. A girl of perhaps 16 burst from the trees, her face streaked with tears, her bonnet hanging down her back. "Violet," the girl cried, dropping to her knees beside them. "Oh God, Violet, I thought you were dead. I thought I watched you die." So her name was Violet. It suited her, Logan thought, then immediately felt foolish for thinking about such things when they had just escaped death. "I am alive," Violet said, reaching up to grasp her sister's hand. "Thanks to this man." Harriet turned her tear-filled eyes to Logan, and he saw the same violet shade as her sister, though hers were lighter, more lavender. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much. I did not know what to do. I was running for help, but she was moving so fast in the current." "It is all right," Logan said, getting shakily to his feet. His legs felt like rubber. "She is safe now, but we need to get her warm and dry. Both of us, truthfully. That water is cold enough to chill a person to the bone." "Our wagon is just up the road," Harriet said, pointing back the way she had come. "We were heading back to town. We have blankets." "Good." Logan bent and, with Harriet's help, got Violet to her feet. She swayed unsteadily, and he kept his arm around her waist to hold her up. She was shivering violently now, her teeth chattering. They needed to move quickly. The three of them made their way through the trees to a narrow dirt road where a small wagon stood, a single horse grazing contentedly nearby, unconcerned with the drama that had just unfolded. Harriet climbed into the back and pulled out 2 heavy wool blankets, draping one around Violet and offering the other to Logan. "Thank you, miss," he said, wrapping it around his shoulders. The rough wool was scratchy against his skin, but blessedly dry. "I am Harriet Dawson," the girl said. "And this is my sister, Violet Dawson. We live in Truckee above the general store. Our father owns it." "Logan Anderson," he replied. "I work at the Triple Bar Ranch about 5 miles west of town." Violet was leaning against the wagon, still shaking, her eyes closed. She looked exhausted, and Logan knew the shock of nearly drowning would hit her soon if it had not already. "We should get her home," he said. "Is it far?" 20 minutes or so," Harriet said, biting her lip as she looked at her sister. "Father is going to be beside himself. Mother, too." "I will ride with you," Logan said, "just to make sure she is all right." He realized only after he said it that his horse was still back by the river where he had left it, along with his boots and hat. Well, they would have to wait. This woman's welfare was more important than his belongings. Harriet helped Violet into the wagon bed, settling her against some sacks of flour they had apparently purchased earlier. Logan climbed onto the driver's seat and took the reins, not trusting either of the Dawson sisters to drive in their current states. Harriet sat beside him, constantly turning to check on Violet, who had curled onto her side, the blanket wrapped tightly around her. As they rolled toward Truckee, Logan found his hands were still shaking slightly on the reins. The reality of what had just happened was settling over him. He had pulled a drowning woman from a raging river. She could have died. They both could have died. If he had been even 30 seconds later, if he had not heard her scream, if he had hesitated for even a moment, he pushed the thoughts away. None of that mattered. She was alive. That was all that counted. "How did you get to the river so fast?" Harriet asked quietly, her young face still pale with shock. "One moment I was alone, screaming for help, watching her disappear, and the next you were in the water." "I was nearby," Logan said simply, "checking fence line. I heard the scream and came running. Sometimes I suppose luck is on a person's side." "It was not luck," Harriet said firmly. "It was Providence. God sent you to save my sister." Logan did not know much about Providence or God's plans, but he nodded anyway. The girl needed to believe in something bigger than chance right now, and he would not take that from her. The town of Truckee came into view, nestled in the valley with the mountains rising dramatically behind it. It was a small but bustling place, grown up around the railroad and the logging industry that fed it. The main street was busy with afternoon traffic, people going about their business, completely unaware that a young woman had nearly lost her life just a few miles away. Logan pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a well-maintained building with Dawson General Store painted across the front in neat letters. Before he could even set the brake, the door flew open, and a man in his 40s rushed out, followed closely by a petite woman with graying dark hair. "Harriet, what is the meaning of bringing a strange man to drive our wagon?" The man began, then stopped short as he caught sight of Violet in the back, wrapped in a blanket, soaking wet. "What in God's name happened?" "Father, Violet fell in the river," Harriet said, climbing down quickly. "The current took her. This man saved her life. He jumped in and pulled her out. She nearly drowned." The color drained from the man's face. The woman let out a small cry and rushed to the back of the wagon, reaching for her daughter. "Violet, baby, can you hear me?" "I am all right, Mother," Violet said, her voice hoarse. She tried to sit up with her mother's help. "Just cold and tired." Logan climbed down from the wagon and stood somewhat awkwardly as the family reunion took place. He was dripping water onto the wooden walkway, still wrapped in the blanket, aware that he must look like a half-drowned rat. The father turned to him, his eyes bright with emotion. "You saved my daughter's life." "I did what anyone would have done, sir," Logan said. "Do not be modest," Harriet interjected. He dove into the river without hesitation. The current was so strong, he would not let her go even when the water was trying to pull them both under. He saved her. The man stepped forward and gripped Logan's hand in both of his, shaking it firmly. Thank you so much. I am Vincent Dawson, and I owe you a debt I can never repay." "No debt necessary," Logan said, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "I am just glad I was there when she needed help." "Nonsense," Vincent said. "You must let us do something for you. Please come inside." "You are as wet as she is. We have dry clothes, hot coffee. It is the least we can offer." Logan wanted to refuse, to get back to his horse and his work, but another violent shiver ran through him and he realized the man was right. He was soaked to the bone and the shock was setting in on him as well. A few minutes to warm up and dry off would not hurt. "All right," he agreed. "Thank you." Vincent and his wife, who introduced herself as Margaret, helped Violet inside while Harriet led Logan through the store to the back where the family's living quarters were located. The store was well stocked and organized, with everything from dry goods to hardware to bolts of fabric. It spoke of a prosperous business and careful management. The living quarters were comfortable and homey, with handmade quilts on the furniture and the smell of bread baking coming from the kitchen. Harriet showed Logan to a small washroom and brought him some clothes that had belonged to her older brother, who had moved to Sacramento the previous year. "They should fit well enough," she said. "Thomas was about your size." Logan thanked her and closed the door, peeling off his wet clothes with some difficulty. His entire body ached from the strain of fighting the current, and he was discovering bruises he did not remember getting. He dried off with a towel and put on the borrowed clothes. They were a bit short in the leg and tight across the shoulders, but they were warm and dry, which was all that mattered. When he emerged, he found the family gathered in the sitting room. Violet had changed into a dry dress and sat wrapped in another blanket near the fireplace, even though it was June. Her mother was pressing a cup of hot tea into her hands while her father paced anxiously. "There now, do not you look better?" Margaret said when she spotted Logan. "Come sit by the fire. I will get you that coffee Vincent promised." Logan sat in the chair Margaret indicated, which happened to be near where Violet was seated on the small sofa. Up close, now that she was not half drowned and blue-lipped, he could see she was quite beautiful. Her dark hair fell in damp waves past her shoulders, and her violet eyes were striking in her pale face. She looked at him over the rim of her teacup, and he saw embarrassment mixed with gratitude in her expression. "I have not properly thanked you," she said softly. "You saved my life. I would have drowned if you had not come." "You do not need to thank me," Logan said, meaning it. "I am just glad the outcome was good." "But you could have drowned yourself," Violet persisted. "You risked your life for a stranger." "Some things you do not think about," Logan said. "You just do them." Margaret returned with coffee, and Logan accepted it gratefully, wrapping his cold hands around the warm mug. Vincent had stopped pacing and was looking at Logan with an expression of deep thought. "You said you work at the Triple Bar Ranch?" Vincent asked. "Yes, sir. Been there about 3 years now. I am head wrangler in charge of the horses and helping manage the cattle operations." "That is a good spread," Vincent said, nodding approvingly. "Sam Barrett runs an honest outfit. You are from Missouri originally. I can hear it in your voice." "Yes, sir. Came west after the war ended." Logan did not elaborate on which war he meant or what side he had been on. Those were old wounds that did not need reopening. "Well, Logan Anderson, you have a standing invitation to dinner at our table anytime you are in town," Vincent said firmly. "And if there is ever anything you need, anything at all, you come to me. I mean that." "That is very generous," Logan said. They talked for a while longer, with Margaret fussing over both Logan and Violet, and Harriet recounting the events of the afternoon with the dramatic flair of youth. Logan learned that Violet was 22 years old, the oldest of the 3 Dawson children, and that she helped run the store while Harriet was finishing her schooling. Their brother Thomas had gone to work for a bank in Sacramento, but came home to visit when he could. As the afternoon wore into evening, Logan finally insisted he needed to head back to the ranch. His boss would be wondering where he had gotten to, and he still needed to retrieve his horse and belongings from the riverbank. "I will drive you back to where you left your horse," Vincent insisted. "It is the least I can do." Logan did not argue. His body was starting to stiffen up from the cold and exertion, and the thought of the long walk was not appealing. As he was preparing to leave, Violet stood and approached him. The color had returned to her face, and though she still looked tired, she no longer seemed in danger of collapse. "Mr. Anderson," she said, and he noticed her voice was melodic, even roughened by the river water she had swallowed. "I know you say no thanks are necessary, but please understand. You gave me back my life today. I will never forget that." She held out her hand, and Logan took it, meaning to shake it formally. Instead, she held on, looking up at him with those remarkable eyes, and he felt something shift in his chest. It was not just that she was beautiful, though she was. It was something in the way she looked at him, as if she was really seeing him, not just a cowboy who had done a good deed. "I am glad you are well, Miss Dawson," he said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Violet," she corrected softly. "Please call me Violet." "I think we are past formalities, do not you?" "Violet," he repeated, and liked the way her name felt in his mouth. Vincent cleared his throat, breaking the moment, and Logan released her hand perhaps a bit reluctantly. They went out to the wagon, and Vincent drove him back to the spot by the river. Logan's horse was still there, grazing peacefully, his boots and hat where he had dropped them. Logan gathered his things, thanked Vincent once more for the dry clothes, and promised he would return them soon. "Keep them," Vincent said, waving off his concerns. "And remember, you are always welcome in our home." Logan rode back to the Triple Bar Ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. His body ached, his mind was tired, but he felt oddly energized. He kept seeing Violet's face in his mind, kept feeling the weight of her in his arms as he fought the current, kept hearing her voice as she thanked him. He told himself it was just the aftermath of the dramatic events. That was all. He had saved someone's life, which would make anyone feel connected to that person. It did not mean anything beyond that. But that night, lying in his bunk in the ranch hand's quarters, Logan dreamed of violet eyes and the sound of rushing water, and woke with his heart pounding. The next few days passed in the normal routine of ranch work. Logan checked fence lines, broke a new horse to saddle, helped move a herd of cattle to fresh pasture. He told the other ranch hands about pulling the woman from the river, downplaying his own role and emphasizing how lucky it was that he had been nearby. They clapped him on the back and called him a hero, which made him uncomfortable, but he could not stop thinking about Violet. He kept finding excuses to ride into town, though he did not stop at the general store. He told himself he was being foolish, that she was the daughter of a prosperous businessman and he was just a ranch hand. He had nothing to offer a woman like that. Still, when Sunday came and he had the day off, Logan found himself riding into Truckee. He told himself he was just returning the borrowed clothes, properly washed and folded. It was the polite thing to do, no matter what Vincent had said about keeping them. The general store was busy with Sunday shoppers, and Logan waited outside for several minutes, suddenly nervous. He was being ridiculous. He was a 25-year-old man who had fought in a war and survived more dangers than he could count. Why was he nervous about walking into a store? Because you want to see her again, a voice in his head whispered. You have not stopped thinking about her since you pulled her from that river. Logan squared his shoulders, adjusted his hat, and walked into the store with the bundle of clothes under his arm. The bell above the door chimed his entrance, and several customers looked up briefly before returning to their shopping. Violet was behind the counter, helping an elderly woman select buttons. She was wearing a simple day dress of pale yellow, her dark hair pinned up neatly, and Logan's breath caught at the sight of her. She looked up at the sound of the bell, and when her eyes met his, her face lit up with a genuine smile that made his chest feel tight. "Mr. Anderson," she said, and he heard pleasure in her voice. What a lovely surprise. The elderly woman turned to look at Logan, her eyes sharp and curious. Violet finished the transaction quickly, wrapped the buttons in brown paper, and sent the woman on her way with a warm goodbye. Then Violet came around the counter toward him, and Logan was struck again by how lovely she was. In the chaos of the river and the shock of the aftermath, he had not fully appreciated it. But now, seeing her healthy and vibrant, he felt that shift in his chest again. "I came to return these," he said, holding out the bundle of clothes, "and to see how you were doing, if you had recovered from your ordeal." "I am quite well, thanks to you," Violet said, taking the clothes. Her fingers brushed his in the exchange, and he felt the contact like a spark. "Though I have been having the strangest dreams about water and struggling to breathe, Mother says it is to be expected that the mind needs time to process what happened." "That makes sense," Logan said. "I imagine it was terrifying." "It was," Violet admitted. "One moment I was reaching for berries, and the next the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I remember the shock of the cold water, the current grabbing me and pulling me under. I tried to swim, but I could not fight it. I thought I was going to die." Her voice had dropped to almost a whisper, and Logan saw her hands were trembling slightly. Without thinking, he reached out and covered her hands with his own. "But you did not die," he said firmly. "You are here. You are safe. Because of you," Violet said, looking up at him. "I remember you in the water, your arm around me, your voice in my ear saying you would not let go. I held onto that like a lifeline." They stood there for a moment, hands touching, eyes locked, and Logan felt the rest of the world fade away. There were other customers in the store, people moving around them, the normal sounds of commerce and conversation, but none of it registered. All he could see was her. "Violet, can you help me with these fabric bolts?" Margaret's voice cut through the moment, and they both stepped back quickly, breaking the contact. Violet's mother emerged from the back room carrying several heavy rolls of fabric. She stopped short when she saw Logan, and her face broke into a warm smile. "Logan, how wonderful to see you. Have you come for Sunday dinner? Vincent mentioned inviting you, but we were not sure if you would come." "Oh, I did not mean to presume," Logan started, but Margaret waved him off. "Nonsense, you are absolutely joining us. We eat at 1 o'clock. That gives you," she glanced at the clock on the wall, "about an hour. You can help Violet close up the store. We close at noon on Sundays." Before Logan could protest or accept, Margaret had swept back into the storeroom, leaving him alone with Violet again. She was biting her lower lip, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "My mother is not subtle," Violet said, "but if you do not have other plans, I would love for you to stay for dinner. Father has been singing your praises all week. I think he wants to adopt you." Logan laughed, surprised by her humor. "Then I suppose I am staying for dinner." "Good," Violet said, and the warmth in her voice made his heart do a strange little flip. For the next hour, Logan helped Violet tidy the store and close up for the afternoon. She gave him tasks, straightening shelves and sweeping the floor, and they talked as they worked. He told her about the ranch, about the horses he trained, about the wide open spaces that had drawn him west. She told him about running the store, about the challenge of keeping track of inventory and customers, about her love of reading, and how she ordered books from San Francisco whenever she could afford them. It was easy talking to her, easier than Logan had found talking to any woman in a long time. Maybe ever. She was smart and funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard and made him laugh. She asked him questions and actually listened to the answers, her eyes focused on his face as if what he said truly mattered to her. When the clock struck noon, Violet locked the front door and flipped the sign to "closed." She took off her work apron and hung it on a peg, then led Logan through the back to the family's living quarters. The small dining room table was set for 5, with Margaret bustling around the kitchen putting finishing touches on the meal. Vincent was reading the newspaper in his chair, and Harriet was setting out glasses of water. The scene was so domestic, so warmly familial, that Logan felt a pang of something he had not experienced in years. Longing, maybe, for something more than the transient life of a ranch hand. Dinner was a lively affair. Margaret had roasted a chicken with potatoes and carrots, and there was fresh bread and butter and apple pie for dessert. Vincent asked Logan about his work at the Triple Bar, and they discussed cattle prices and the railroad and the challenges of ranching in the high country. Harriet talked about her schooling and her dreams of perhaps becoming a teacher. Margaret shared town gossip in the gentle way of someone who cared about her community without being cruel. And Violet sat across from Logan, occasionally catching his eye with a small smile that made him lose track of the conversation. After dinner, Vincent suggested Logan stay for the afternoon. "We usually spend Sundays quietly," he said. "Reading, playing cards, taking walks. You are welcome to join us." Logan knew he should decline. He had chores back at the ranch, things he should be doing on his day off. But when Violet suggested they take a walk around town, he found himself agreeing before his practical side could object. They walked together through the quiet Sunday streets of Truckee, maintaining a proper distance, but close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. Violet pointed out buildings and told him stories about the town, about the people who lived there, about how it had grown up around the railroad and the logging camps. "You like it here?" Logan asked. "In Truckee?" "I do," Violet said. though sometimes I wonder what else is out there. I have never been further than Sacramento. My mother says it is not ladylike to have wandering feet, but I cannot help it. I want to see more of the world." "I understand that," Logan said. "I left Missouri when I was 20, right after the war. I wanted to see what was west of everything I knew. Wanted to start fresh in a place that did not carry so many memories." "The war," Violet said softly. "You fought." "I did." Logan did not elaborate, and Violet had the grace not to push. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, heading toward the edge of town where the houses gave way to meadows and forest. The Sierra Nevada mountains rose dramatically in the distance, still capped with snow even in early summer. "Can I ask you something?" Violet said after a while. "Of course. When you jumped in the river after me, did you think about the danger, about the fact that you could drown too?" Logan considered the question carefully. "No," he said honestly. "I did not think at all. I just knew someone needed help and I was the only one there to provide it. The thinking came later when we were safe on the bank and my mind had time to catch up with my body." "That is what makes you brave," Violet said. "Acting without thinking when someone needs you. Or foolish," Logan said with a slight smile. "No," Violet said firmly. "Brave. Foolish would be jumping in for no reason or to show off. You jumped in to save a life. That is the definition of courage." They had reached a small park at the edge of town, with a few benches overlooking a meadow filled with wildflowers. Violet sat down on one of the benches, and Logan sat beside her, careful to maintain a respectable distance even though what he really wanted was to be closer to her. "Can I be honest with you about something?" Violet asked, her hands folded in her lap. "Please." "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since that day," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I know that is probably improper to say. A lady should be more reserved. But nearly dying has a way of making you feel like honesty is more important than propriety." Logan's heart was beating faster. "I have been thinking about you too," he admitted. "More than I probably should." Violet turned to look at him, and he saw hope and uncertainty mixed in her expression. "What do we do about that?" "I do not know," Logan said. "I am just a ranch hand, Violet. I do not have much to offer. You deserve someone who can give you a good life, security, a real future." "Why do men always assume they know what women deserve?" Violet asked, a hint of fire in her voice. "I can decide for myself what I want and what I deserve. And right now, I want to get to know you better, Logan Anderson. I want to spend time with you and see where this feeling leads. Is that something you want too?" Logan looked at her, at this brave, beautiful woman who had nearly died and come out of it with even more determination to live fully. And he felt something inside him crack open. Something that had been locked away since the war, since he had decided that a wandering cowboy's life was all he was meant for. "Yes," he said simply. "That is something I want very much." Violet smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Good. Then we will see each other again. Soon." "I come to town every Sunday," Logan said. "It is my day off. I could call on you if your parents would not mind." "They would not mind," Violet assured him. "Especially given that you saved my life. You could probably ask to marry me tomorrow and Father would agree." Logan felt his face heat at the mention of marriage. "I think we should probably have more than one conversation before we discuss marriage." "Probably," Violet agreed, her eyes sparkling with humor. "But it is nice to know the option is there." They sat together in the park until the afternoon light started to fade, talking about everything and nothing. Logan told her about his childhood in Missouri, about learning to ride horses before he could properly walk, about his parents who had both passed from fever when he was 18. Violet told him about growing up in the store, about learning arithmetic by counting inventory, about her dreams of someday traveling to San Francisco or even further. When Logan finally walked Violet back to her home, the evening was settling over the town in shades of purple and blue. At the door, Violet turned to face him, and Logan was acutely aware of how close they were standing. "Thank you for today," Violet said. "For staying for dinner, for the walk, for the conversation. It was lovely." "Thank you for inviting me," Logan said, "and for your honesty about thinking of me." "Will you come again next Sunday?" Violet asked. "I will come again next Sunday," Logan promised, "and maybe sometime during the week if I can get away. I would like that." They stood there for another moment, neither quite willing to say goodbye, until the door opened and Harriet poked her head out. "Are you two going to stand out here all night?" she asked with the typical lack of tact of a 16-year-old. "Mother is beginning to gossip about it." Violet laughed and rolled her eyes. "I am coming in now, Harriet. Tell Mother to calm herself." Harriet disappeared back inside, leaving the door open in a clear indication that Violet was expected to follow immediately. "Until next time," Violet said softly. "Until next time," Logan echoed. He watched her go inside, then mounted his horse and rode back toward the ranch, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. True to his word, Logan came to call on Violet the following Sunday, and the Sunday after that. Between those visits, he found excuses to ride into town during the week, always stopping by the general store for some small purchase, some minor thing he claimed to need. Vincent and Margaret watched the growing attachment with approval, and Harriet teased them mercilessly whenever she got the chance. July turned into August, and Logan and Violet fell into a pattern. He would come to town on Sundays, attend church with the family, share the midday meal, and then he and Violet would walk together through town or sit in the park, always chaperoned by Harriet or visible to anyone who might pass by. It was all perfectly proper, but the feelings growing between them were anything but simple. Logan found himself planning his weeks around seeing Violet. He worked harder and faster on his ranch duties so he could justify the time away. He saved his wages to buy small gifts, a ribbon for her hair, a book she had mentioned wanting to read. He lay awake at night thinking about her laugh, her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she saw him. And Violet, for her part, counted down the days until Sunday with an eagerness she did not try to hide. She wore her best dresses when she knew Logan would be coming. She helped her mother prepare his favorite foods. She talked about him constantly to Harriet, who declared herself utterly sick of hearing about Logan Anderson's virtues but smiled while she said it. In late August, on a particularly warm Sunday afternoon, Logan and Violet walked out to the spot by the river where she had nearly drowned. It was the first time either of them had returned since that day, and Violet admitted she had been avoiding it out of an irrational fear. "It is just water," she said as they stood on the bank, looking at the river that had calmed considerably since the spring floods. "I know that in my mind. But my heart still races when I think about it." "That is not irrational," Logan said. "You went through something traumatic. It is natural to be afraid." "I do not want to be afraid," Violet said. "I do not want that river to have power over me." Logan looked at the water, then at Violet, and made a decision. "Come with me." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Violet took it. He led her down to the very edge of the water where it lapped gently at the muddy bank. "Just water," he said softly. "Today it is calm. It is not the enemy. It was just doing what rivers do, flowing where nature tells it to flow. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but you survived. You are stronger than the river, Violet." Violet stared at the water, her hand tight in Logan's. Then slowly, she knelt down and put her other hand in the river, letting the cool water flow over her fingers. "I survived," she whispered. "I am stronger than the river." She stood up and Logan saw tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Thank you," she said, "for bringing me here. For helping me face it." "You faced it yourself," Logan said. "I just stood beside you." "You are always doing that," Violet said. "Standing beside me, supporting me." "I want to keep doing that," Logan said, and he knew they had moved beyond casual courtship into something deeper. "For a long time, if you will let me." "How long?" Violet asked, her eyes searching his. "However long you will have me," Logan said. "Violet, I know it has only been a couple months, but I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore. You have become essential to me." "You are essential to me too," Violet said softly. "I think I started falling in love with you in that river when you held me and told me you would not let go, and I have been falling ever since." "I love you," Logan said, the words coming easily even though he had never said them to anyone before. "I am just a cowboy without much to my name, but I love you with everything I am." "I do not care about what you have to your name," Violet said fiercely. "I care about who you are. And you are good and kind and brave, and I love you too, Logan Anderson." They stood on the riverbank, hands clasped, and Logan leaned forward to kiss her. It was soft and sweet, a promise of more to come, and when they parted, both of them were smiling. "I need to talk to your father," Logan said. "Properly? Ask his permission to court you with the intent of marriage. He will say yes," Violet assured him. "He already thinks of you as a son. Still, it should be done right." That evening, Logan did just that. He sat with Vincent in the small parlor and formally asked for permission to court Violet with marriage as the goal. Vincent, as predicted, agreed immediately, shaking Logan's hand with genuine warmth. "I could not ask for a better man for my daughter," Vincent said. "You have proven your character 100 times over. When you are ready to marry, you have my blessing." "Thank you, sir," Logan said, feeling relief and joy in equal measure. "I intend to save up enough to provide for her properly. It may take a few months, maybe longer, but I want to do this right." "Take the time you need," Vincent said. "Though between you and me, I do not think Violet cares much about how much money you have saved. She just wants to be your wife." Over the next few months, Logan worked harder than ever. He took on extra duties at the ranch, worked longer hours, saved every penny he could. Sam Barrett, the ranch owner, noticed his dedication and offered him a promotion to foreman, with a significant raise in pay and a small cabin on the property that came with the position. Logan accepted immediately, knowing this was the security he needed to offer Violet. He spent his rare free time fixing up the cabin, making it into a real home. He built furniture, patched the roof, put glass in the windows that had only had oilcloth coverings. He wanted everything to be perfect for when he brought Violet there as his wife. He proposed in October, on a crisp autumn day when the aspens were turning gold. He had saved enough for a simple gold band, and he took Violet back to the river, to the place where their story began. "I do not have much," he said as he knelt in front of her, the ring in his hand. "But I have a job I am good at, a home we can share, and a heart that is completely yours. Will you marry me, Violet Dawson? Will you take a chance on a future with me?" "Yes," Violet said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and Logan stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. They were going to be married. She was going to be his wife. They set the wedding for December, wanting to give enough time for preparations, but not wanting to wait any longer than necessary. Margaret threw herself into wedding planning with enthusiasm, ordering fabric from San Francisco for a dress, arranging for a reception at the town hall, inviting what seemed like every person in Truckee. Logan endured the fuss with good humor, more focused on the outcome than the process. He was going to marry Violet. Nothing else really mattered. The wedding took place on a cold December morning, with snow falling gently outside the small church. Violet wore a dress of white satin with lace at the throat and wrists, and Logan thought she looked like something from a dream. He wore a new suit, purchased especially for the occasion, and tried not to fidget as the preacher led them through their vows. When he was finally allowed to kiss his bride, Logan pulled Violet close and kissed her with all the love and promise he felt, not caring that half the town was watching. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you," she whispered back. The reception was a joyful affair with food and music and dancing. Logan, who had never been much for social events, found himself enjoying every moment because Violet was beside him, her hand in his, her eyes shining with happiness. As the afternoon faded into evening, they said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon Logan had borrowed to drive them to the ranch. Violet was wrapped in a warm cloak, her wedding dress carefully preserved in a trunk in the back of the wagon, having changed into traveling clothes for the journey. The ride to the Triple Bar took almost an hour, and they spent it talking and laughing, making plans for their future. When they finally arrived at the small cabin that was now their home, Logan insisted on carrying Violet over the threshold, which made her laugh and protest that it was old-fashioned and silly. "Old-fashioned and silly, maybe," Logan agreed, "but tradition. And I want to start our marriage honoring all the good traditions." Inside, the cabin was warm from the fire Logan had built before leaving that morning. He had stocked the shelves with food, put fresh linens on the bed, made everything as comfortable as he could. It was not much, but it was theirs. Violet looked around with wonder, touching the furniture Logan had made, examining the curtains he had hung, clearly moved by the care he had taken. "It is perfect," she said softly. "Absolutely perfect." That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion, learning each other's bodies, cementing their bond. And later, lying in each other's arms as the fire burned low, Logan thought about how his life had changed since that day by the river. He had been alone, content with his solitary existence, not looking for anything beyond his work and the open spaces of the West. Then he had heard a scream and jumped into a river, and everything had changed. Now he had a wife, a home, a future full of possibilities. "What are you thinking about?" Violet asked sleepily, her head on his chest. "About how lucky I am," Logan said. "About how one moment can change everything." "You changed my life when you pulled me from that river," Violet said. "You gave me a second chance at living. And then you gave me a reason to make that second chance count." "We gave each other that," Logan corrected gently. "I was just going through the motions before I met you. Now I feel like I am actually alive." They fell asleep tangled together, warm and safe, the first night of their married life peaceful and full of promise. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, as all new marriages are. Logan was used to living alone, to doing things his own way, and Violet was used to living with her family, to the rhythms of the general store and town life. Learning to live together, to compromise and communicate, required patience on both sides. But they were both committed to making it work, and slowly they found their rhythm. Violet learned to cook on the cast iron stove, experimenting with recipes and laughing at her failures. Logan learned to be more communicative, to share his thoughts and feelings rather than keeping everything locked inside. They learned to dance together, literally and figuratively, finding the balance between independence and togetherness. In the spring, Violet planted a garden outside their cabin, determined to grow vegetables and herbs. Logan built her a fence to keep out the deer and rabbits, and they spent evenings together tending the small plot of land, working side by side. Violet also began keeping books for the ranch, helping Sam Barrett with the accounts and paperwork. She had a head for numbers and organization, and Sam was grateful for the help. It gave Violet something productive to do and made her feel like she was contributing to their household. By summer, they had settled into a comfortable life. Logan worked hard but always made time for his wife, and Violet made their small cabin into a warm and welcoming home. They rode into town every Sunday to have dinner with her family, and Vincent and Margaret delighted in seeing their daughter so happy. In August, Violet realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when her monthly courses did not come for the second time, she knew for certain. She told Logan one evening after supper, simply and directly, watching his face carefully for his reaction. Logan stared at her for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "A baby," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Violet said, laughing at his expression. "In late winter or early spring, if my calculations are correct." Logan pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I am going to be a father," he said against her hair. "I never thought I would have this, a family of my own." "Well, you do now," Violet said. "Or you will in a few months. Are you happy about it?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Logan said. "I am over the moon." They told her family the following Sunday, and Margaret cried happy tears while Vincent pumped Logan's hand enthusiastically. Harriet, now 17 and courting a young man from town, declared she could not wait to be an aunt. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Violet experienced morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon for the first few months. Logan was solicitous and attentive, sometimes overly so, which made Violet laugh and tell him she was pregnant, not made of glass. As winter set in, Logan became increasingly worried about the baby coming during the harsh mountain winter. What if the weather made it impossible to get the doctor? What if something went wrong? Violet assured him that women had been having babies for thousands of years, often in much worse conditions, but his anxiety did not lessen. In February, when the snow was deep and the nights were bitterly cold, Violet's labor began. It was mid-afternoon, and Logan was home checking on her as he had been doing every few hours despite her protests that he was being ridiculous. "I think the baby is coming," Violet said calmly, even as she gripped the edge of the table during a contraction. Logan went white. "Now." "But it is too early. You said early spring." "Babies come when they want to come," Violet said. "You need to ride for the doctor and for my mother." Logan did not want to leave her, but he knew he had to. He rode through the snow to town faster than was safe, his heart in his throat, fear clawing at him. What if something happened while he was gone? What if he lost her? He got the doctor and Margaret and rode back with them, the journey that normally took an hour feeling like it took days. When they finally arrived back at the cabin, he burst through the door to find Violet pacing, breathing through contractions, very much alive. "I told you I would be fine," she said with a strained smile. The next several hours were the longest of Logan's life. He was banished to the main room while the doctor and Margaret attended to Violet in the bedroom. He could hear her cries of pain, and each one felt like a knife to his heart. He paced, prayed, and paced some more. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, he heard a new sound, the wail of a baby. Logan's legs went weak with relief. Margaret emerged a few minutes later, tired but smiling. "You have a son," she said, "and Violet is doing wonderfully. You can go in now." Logan entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Violet was propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. She looked up at him, and her smile was radiant despite her obvious tiredness. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Logan approached and looked down at the baby in her arms. He was tiny, with a shock of dark hair and a scrunched-up face. His eyes were closed, his little fists waving slightly. He was the most beautiful thing Logan had ever seen, aside from his wife. "Can I hold him?" Logan asked, his voice rough with emotion. Violet carefully transferred the baby into his arms, and Logan cradled his son with the same care he used when handling newborn colts. The baby made a small sound, and Logan felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Logan whispered. "You are amazing." "I cannot believe you did that." "Women do it every day," Violet said, but she looked pleased by his awe. "What should we name him?" Logan asked. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son's face, Logan knew exactly what he wanted to call him. "Lucas," he said. "Lucas Vincent Anderson, after your father, if that is all right with you." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "That is more than all right. My father will be honored. Lucas, our little Luke." Over the following weeks, Logan discovered that being a father was both harder and more rewarding than he had imagined. Lucas was a good baby, healthy and strong, but he still woke multiple times a night to eat and demanded constant attention. Logan helped as much as he could, changing diapers and walking the floor with his son when he was fussy, giving Violet breaks when she needed them. He also discovered that his capacity for love was far greater than he had known. He loved Violet with his whole heart, but the love he felt for his son was different, fierce and protective and overwhelming. He would die for this tiny human without hesitation. As spring came and the snow melted, life settled into a new normal. Lucas grew and thrived, hitting all his milestones right on schedule. Vincent and Margaret visited often, completely besotted with their grandson. Harriet came too, bringing her new husband, a quiet man named Robert who worked as a carpenter in town. The seasons turned, one into another, and the little family in the cabin on the Triple Bar Ranch grew and changed. Lucas took his first steps, said his first words, became a rambunctious toddler full of energy and curiosity. Logan taught him to ride a horse before he was 3, and Violet taught him his letters and numbers. When Lucas was 4, Violet became pregnant again. This time Logan was less anxious, more confident in the process, though he still worried. The second baby, a girl they named Virginia Grace, arrived easily on a warm July day, much to everyone's relief. Virginia was different from Lucas, quieter and more observant with her mother's violet eyes. Logan fell in love with her just as completely as he had with his son, and Lucas was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her. The years passed in a blur of children and work and love. Logan thrived as the ranch foreman, and Sam Barrett increasingly relied on him to make important decisions. Violet continued keeping the books and managing the household, somehow juggling everything with grace and humor. When Lucas was 8 and Virginia was 4, Violet announced she was pregnant a third time. This pregnancy was harder, with more sickness and fatigue, and Logan worried constantly. But in March, she delivered a healthy baby boy they named Lawrence Matthew, and Logan's family felt complete. 3 children, a wife he loved more every day, a job that challenged and fulfilled him. Logan sometimes could not believe this was his life. He thought back to that day by the river, to the moment he heard a scream and made a split-second decision to jump into the water, and he marveled at how that single action had changed everything. The children grew, as children do. Lucas became a serious boy who loved horses and showed signs of becoming an excellent horseman like his father. Virginia was quiet but sharp, always reading or drawing, her mind constantly working. Lawrence was the wild child, fearless and adventurous, keeping both his parents on their toes. When Lucas turned 16, he began working alongside Logan on the ranch, learning the business from the ground up. Logan was proud of his son's work ethic and natural ability with livestock. Virginia, at 12, had begun helping her mother with the books and showing an aptitude for mathematics that amazed everyone. Lawrence, at 8, was still more interested in exploring and getting into trouble, though he had a good heart. It was a warm evening in June when the family gathered on the porch of their cabin, which Logan had expanded several times over the years to accommodate their growing family. Lucas was cleaning tack, Virginia was reading a book, Lawrence was playing with a wooden horse Logan had carved for him, and Violet was sitting in the rocking chair Logan had made when she was pregnant with their first child. Logan sat on the steps, looking out at the land that had become home at the family he had built, and felt a contentment so deep it almost hurt. "What are you thinking about?" Violet asked, the same question she had asked him countless times over the years. "About the river," Logan said honestly. "About the day I pulled you out of it. You still think about that?" Violet asked, surprise in her voice. "All the time," Logan admitted. "It was the best day of my life, even though at the time I did not know it would be. Everything good in my life started that day." Violet stood and came to sit beside him on the step, taking his hand in hers. Their hands were older now, marked by work and weather, but the way they fit together was the same as it had been that first time she reached for him. "It was the best day of my life too," she said softly. "The day I died and the day I truly started living all in one. The day you would not let go." "I will never let go," Logan said, the same promise he had made in the river all those years ago. "Not ever, I know," Violet said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "That is why I love you." They sat together in the gathering dusk, their children around them, their life spread out before them like a gift. Logan thought about the choices he had made, the path he had walked, the lucky accident that had brought him to that riverbank at exactly the right moment. He did not believe much in fate or destiny, but he believed in moments that mattered. Moments when a person had to decide who they were and what they stood for. His moment had been hearing a scream and choosing to act, choosing to dive into dangerous water for a stranger, choosing to hold on even when it would have been easier to let go. And every good thing that had come after had grown from that choice, from that moment. His love for Violet, their children, the life they had built together. All of it traced back to a warm June day in 1878 when a river tried to take a woman, and a cowboy refused to allow it. Lucas came over to join them, sitting on Logan's other side. He was nearly as tall as his father now, with the same strong build and serious expression. "Father, I was thinking about maybe starting to look at my own place in a few years. I have been saving my wages, and Sam mentioned there is some land for sale on the east side of the property." Logan felt a mixture of pride and sadness. His son was growing up, becoming his own man. "That is a good idea," he said. "You let me know when you are ready and I will help you however I can." Virginia looked up from her book. "I want to go to school in Sacramento," she announced. "There is a women's college there. I want to study to become a teacher." Violet sat up straight. "That is wonderful, Virginia. We will make it happen." "I want to be a cowboy like father," Lawrence chimed in, not to be left out. "You are already a cowboy," Logan said with a smile. "The wildest one I know." The family talked into the evening, making plans and dreaming dreams, and Logan listened with a full heart. His children were finding their own paths, as they should, but they would always be his children, always be part of this family he and Violet had created. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Logan and Violet lay together in the darkness of their room. They had shared this bed for years now, had loved and fought and made up in it, had whispered secrets and dreams in the quiet hours. "You ever regret it?" Logan asked suddenly. "Marrying a cowboy, living out here away from town, raising children in a small cabin on a ranch." "Never," Violet said without hesitation. "Do you regret pulling a foolish woman out of a river?" "She was not foolish," Logan corrected. "She was unlucky. And no, I have never regretted it for a single moment." "Then we are both exactly where we are meant to be," Violet said. She rolled over to face him, and even in the darkness, he could see the outline of her face, could feel the warmth of her body next to his. They had been married for over 18 years, had weathered storms and joys together, and he loved her more now than he had on their wedding day. "I love you, Violet Anderson," he said. "I love you, Logan Anderson," she replied. They fell asleep holding each other, the way they had every night since they married, secure in their love and their life together. The years continued to pass, bringing changes as years do. Lucas did buy that land and build his own small ranch, marrying a sweet girl named Emma from town and starting his own family. Virginia went off to Sacramento to attend college, returning home during summers full of stories about her classes and new experiences. Lawrence grew into a strapping young man who stayed on the triple bar, working alongside Logan and showing every sign of becoming as good a horseman as his father. Sam Barrett retired and sold the triple bar to Logan, who had saved enough over the years to make it possible. It was a dream Logan had not even known he had until it became real. The triple bar became the Anderson Ranch, and Logan ran it with the same dedication and integrity he had shown as foreman. Violet helped manage the business side, her head for numbers and organization, keeping everything running smoothly. Together, they built something lasting, something they could be proud of. Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep when he was 72, and the whole family mourned him. Margaret followed 2 years later, her heart giving out one quiet morning. They were buried side by side in the Truckee cemetery, and Logan made sure their graves were always tended and decorated with fresh flowers. Harriet and Robert moved to Sacramento to be near Virginia, and the family would gather there for holidays, a loud and loving clan that spanned generations. Logan and Violet grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies slowing, but their love never diminishing. They would take walks together in the evenings, hand in hand, talking about their children and grandchildren, about the ranch, about the life they had shared. One evening in late spring, when Logan was 63 and Violet was 60, they returned to the river. It had been years since they had been to this spot, the place where everything began. The river was running high with snowmelt, much as it had been that day so long ago. "You remember?" Violet asked, standing on the bank. "I remember everything," Logan said. "The sound of your scream, the shock of the cold water, the weight of you in my arms, the way you held onto me like I was your only hope. I remember telling you I would not let go and meaning it with everything in me." "You saved my life that day," Violet said, tears in her eyes. "And then you spent the rest of your life making sure that life was worth living." "You did the same for me," Logan said, pulling her close. "I was just existing before I met you. You taught me how to truly live, how to love, how to build something that matters." They stood together on the riverbank, holding each other, and Logan thought about the circle of life, how everything came back around. He had pulled Violet from this river 42 years ago, and in doing so, had saved himself as well. They had built a life together that was rich and full, had raised children who were good people, had loved each other through everything life threw at them. "Thank you," Violet whispered against his chest. "For what?" Logan asked. "For not letting go," she said. "For holding on even when it was hard. For choosing me every single day." "I will always choose you," Logan said. "In this life and whatever comes after, you are my heart, Violet. You always have been." They stayed by the river until the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, then walked home hand in hand, their steps slower than they once were but no less steady. They had decades behind them and hopefully years still ahead, but whatever time they had left, they would face it together. Because Logan had made a promise in a raging river 42 years ago, a promise to not let go, and he had kept that promise every day since. Through joy and sorrow, through triumph and challenge, through the mundane and the extraordinary moments that made up a life, he had held on to Violet and she had held on to him. And that, Logan thought as they reached their home with the lights shining warm in the windows and the sounds of their family inside, that was what love really meant. Not grand gestures or romantic words, though those had their place, but the daily choice to hold on, to stay, to work through the hard things and celebrate the good things, to build a life together one moment at a time. He had jumped into a river for a stranger and come out with a soulmate. He had risked his life for someone he did not know and gained everything worth having. It was the best decision he had ever made, and he would make it again 1,000 times over. Inside their home, their son Lawrence was waiting with his wife and their 2 children, come for Sunday dinner. Lucas and Emma would arrive soon with their 4 kids. Virginia was traveling back from Sacramento with her husband, a professor she had met at college. The house would be full of noise and laughter, of family and love, of the legacy Logan and Violet had created together. "Ready to go in?" Violet asked, pausing at the door. "Ready," Logan said, squeezing her hand. They walked into their home together, into the warmth and light and love that filled every corner, and Logan's heart was full to overflowing. This was what he had saved when he pulled Violet from the river. Not just one life, but all the lives that had come from that one life, all the love and joy and connection that had grown from that single moment of courage. The river had tried to take her, but Logan had held on. And in holding on, he had found everything he never knew he needed. A home, a family, a purpose, a love that transcended time and circumstance. He had found his reason for being, his place in the world, his happily ever after. And it all started with a scream, a river, and a cowboy who refused to let go. As the evening progressed, and the house filled with the people they loved most, Logan caught Violet's eye across the crowded room. She smiled at him, that same smile that had first caught his attention all those years ago, and mouthed the words, "I love you." "I love you too," he mouthed back, and knew that no matter how many years they had been together, he would never tire of saying those words, of feeling that truth in his bones. Later, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, Logan and Violet prepared for bed with the comfortable ease of long practice. They moved around each other seamlessly, a dance perfected over decades. When they finally climbed into bed, Violet curled into Logan's side as she always did, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "It was a good day," Violet murmured sleepily. "It was a perfect day," Logan agreed. "Most days with you are perfect," Violet said, "even the hard ones." Logan asked, thinking of the challenges they had faced over the years, the losses and struggles and difficult times. "Especially the hard ones," Violet said, "because we faced them together. That is what makes them bearable, knowing I have you beside me no matter what." Logan kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "You will always have me beside you," he promised. "That is one thing that will never change." "I know," Violet said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "You promised you would not let go, and you never have." "I never will," Logan said softly. They drifted off to sleep together as they had thousands of nights before, secure in their love and their life together. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, and the stars shone bright in the clear mountain sky. The river that had brought them together continued its eternal flow, carving its path through the landscape, indifferent to the human dramas that played out on its banks. But for Logan and Violet Anderson, that river would always be sacred ground, the place where their story began, where love first took root and grew into something beautiful and lasting. They had taken the gift of a second chance and built something extraordinary with it, a legacy of love and family that would continue long after they were gone. Years later, when Logan was 75 and Violet was 72, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary with a gathering that brought together their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The family had grown large and sprawling, but everyone made the journey back to the ranch for this special occasion. They held the celebration outside under the towering pines, with tables laden with food and lanterns strung between the trees. As the sun set and the party continued, Logan stood and raised his glass for a toast. 50 years ago, he began, his voice still strong despite his age, I married the most remarkable woman I have ever known, and every single day since then has been a gift. Violet, you are my heart, my home, my reason for everything. Thank you for saying yes all those years ago and for continuing to say yes every day since. Violet stood beside him, tears streaming down her face, and raised her own glass. Logan saved my life before he ever married me, she said. And then he spent 50 years making sure that life was filled with love and joy and purpose. I am the luckiest woman in the world to be his wife, and I would not change a single moment of our journey together. The family cheered and toasted them, and Logan pulled Violet into his arms for a kiss that made their grandchildren giggle and their great-grandchildren ask why the old people were being gross. As the party continued around them, Logan and Violet stole away for a moment of quiet, walking a short distance from the celebration to stand under the stars. 50 years, Violet said wonderingly. Where did the time go? Into this, Logan said, gesturing back toward the party, toward their family. Into building something that will outlast us both, into loving you with everything I had to give. Do you have any regrets? Violet asked. Logan thought about it seriously, reviewing the decades they had shared, the choices they had made, the paths they had walked. No, he said finally, not a single one. This life we built together, this family, this love, it is more than I ever dreamed of having, more than I deserve. You deserve it all, Violet said fiercely. You are the best man I have ever known, Logan Anderson, strong and kind and true. I have been blessed beyond measure to spend my life with you. I am the blessed one, Logan argued gently. You could have had anyone. You could have married someone wealthy, someone who could have given you an easier life. Instead, you chose me, a cowboy with more determination than sense. I chose you because you were exactly what I needed, Violet said, and I have never once regretted that choice. Not when things were hard, not when money was tight, not during any of the challenges we faced. Because we faced them together, and that made all the difference. They stood together in the darkness, holding each other close, and Logan felt the same rush of love and gratitude he had felt the first time he held her, pulling her from the river all those years ago. The intensity had not diminished with time. If anything, it had grown deeper and more profound, layered with shared history and accumulated memories. I love you, Violet, he said, the words as true now as they had ever been. I love you, Logan, she replied, forever and always. They returned to the party hand in hand and danced together under the stars, their family watching with love and admiration. They moved slowly, their bodies no longer young and agile, but their connection as strong as ever. This was their legacy, Logan thought as he held his wife and looked at the faces of their children and grandchildren. Not wealth or fame or grand achievements, but love. Simple, enduring, transformative love. The years that followed were quieter, as old age settled over them both. Logan handed over the day-to-day running of the ranch to Lawrence, who had grown into a fine rancher and businessman. Violet slowed down as well, spending her days reading, tending her garden, and spoiling her great-grandchildren when they came to visit. But they still took their evening walks together, still held hands across the dinner table, still slept wrapped in each other's arms every night. The love that had sustained them for 5 decades continued strong, a constant in a changing world. When Logan was 79, he fell ill. It started as a bad cough that would not go away and eventually became pneumonia. The doctor did what he could, but Logan was old and his body was tired. As he lay in bed, struggling to breathe, his family gathered around him. Violet sat beside him, holding his hand, her face drawn with worry and grief. "You cannot leave me," she whispered fiercely. "You promised you would not let go." "Never letting go," Logan managed to say through his labored breathing. "Just going ahead to save you a place." "But Violet, I need you to do something for me." "Anything," she said, leaning close to hear him. "Live," Logan said. "After I am gone, I need you to keep living, not just existing, but really living. Spend time with the children and grandchildren. Read those books you love. Tend your garden. Laugh. Find joy. Promise me." "Logan, do not talk like that." "You are going to get better," Violet said, but her voice was shaking. "Promise me," Logan insisted, gripping her hand with what strength he had left. "Please, Violet, I need to know you will be all right." "I promise," Violet said through her tears. "But only if you promise to wait for me on the other side. Promise you will be there when my time comes." "I promise," Logan said. "I will always find you, in this life or the next. We are connected, you and I. That does not end just because I am leaving this body behind." He lingered for another 2 days, with Violet never leaving his side. She talked to him constantly, reminding him of their life together, of the moments they had shared, of the love that had defined their marriage. And when he finally passed, quietly in the early hours of a spring morning, she was holding his hand, just as he had held hers so long ago in the river. The grief hit Violet like a physical blow. For weeks, she could barely function, moving through the days in a fog of pain and loss. Her children worried about her, staying close, trying to help. But they understood that losing Logan after 54 years of marriage was not something she would recover from quickly or easily. But gradually, remembering her promise to Logan, Violet began to emerge from her grief. She started spending time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, finding joy in their youth and energy. She tended her garden with renewed purpose, finding peace in the rhythms of nature. She read voraciously, losing herself in stories the way she had as a young woman. And every Sunday, no matter the weather, she would walk down to the river, to the spot where Logan had pulled her from the water all those years ago. She would sit on the bank and talk to him, telling him about the family, about the ranch, about the world he had left behind. She felt his presence there, felt the love that still connected them despite the veil of death. 5 years after Logan passed, Violet developed a heart condition. The doctor said it was common in people her age, that her heart was simply wearing out. Violet was not afraid. If anything, she felt relief. She had kept her promise to Logan, had lived fully for 5 more years, but she was tired and ready to go home to him. On a warm June day, exactly 60 years after Logan had pulled her from the river, Violet gathered her family around her. She was in bed in the cabin she and Logan had shared for so many years, weak but clear-minded. "It is time," she told her children gently. "I can feel it. I am going to be with your father soon." Lucas, now an old man himself, held his mother's hand. "We love you, Mother. Thank you for everything you gave us." "I love all of you so much," Violet said, looking at each of her children in turn. "You have made my life so rich and full, but I am ready now, ready to see your father again." Virginia wiped tears from her eyes. "Tell Father we miss him, that we love him." "He already knows," Violet said with a soft smile, "but I will tell him anyway." Lawrence, the youngest, kissed his mother's forehead. "Thank you for showing us what real love looks like. You and Father the way you loved each other. That is what we all aspire to." "Then I know you will be happy," Violet said. "Love with your whole heart, the way your father and I loved each other. That is the secret to a good life." As the afternoon faded into evening, Violet slipped away peacefully, surrounded by love, ready to be reunited with the man who had saved her life, and then made that life worth living. Her last words were, "Logan, I am coming." And those who were there swore they saw a smile cross her face at the very end. They buried Violet next to Logan on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains and the valley below. The headstone read, "Violet Dawson Anderson, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she lived fully and loved completely." And beneath that, "Forever reunited with her beloved Logan who never let go." The family gathered after the funeral, sharing stories about Violet and Logan, about the love that had sustained them both for so many years. The grandchildren told their children about how Logan had jumped into a river to save Violet, about how that moment of courage had led to a lifetime of love. It became the family story, the legend passed down through generations, a reminder of what real love looked like. And on warm summer evenings when the light was soft and golden, some family members swore they could see two figures walking by the river, hand in hand, eternal and together at last. Whether it was real or just wishful thinking, no one could say. But it comforted them to imagine that somewhere, in some way, Logan and Violet were still together, still loving each other, still holding on just as Logan had promised that day in the river so long ago. The river continued its eternal flow, carrying water from the mountains to the valley, indifferent to the human stories that unfolded on its banks. But for the Anderson family, that river would always be sacred, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying moments can lead to the most beautiful outcomes, that courage and love can transform everything, and that a promise made in desperation can become the foundation for a lifetime of happiness. Logan had heard a scream and jumped into a river. He had fought the current and refused to let go. And in doing so, he had not just saved a life, but had found his own reason for living. He had discovered a love that transcended time and circumstances, that lasted through every challenge and grew stronger with each passing year. Their story became the cornerstone of the Anderson family legacy, a testament to the power of courage, commitment, and enduring love. Generations would tell and retell it, would look to Logan and Violet as examples of what marriage could be, what love should look like. And always, always, the story would end the same way, with a cowboy who dove into a raging river for a stranger, held on when every instinct told him to let go, and found his forever in the arms of a woman with violet eyes who had been brave enough to love him back with equal intensity and devotion. The river current had pulled her under, but the cowboy dove in and would not let go. And from that moment of terror and courage, a love story for the ages had been born, a story that would live on long after its principles had passed into legend, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is hold on, to fight for love, to choose connection over fear, and to build a life together one precious moment at a time.